I'm Beaulieu. Thank you for joining us for this May 19th edition of FedWatch. Three things I want to cover today. First is an introduction to the new vice chairman of the federal board. His name is Philip Jefferson. And then we're going to take a quick look at the other nominee, the newest nominee, Adriana Kugler, and what we might expect from her. Not sure yet. And then finally, we're going to look at how the Fed has an unrealistic expectation regarding loosening of the labor market or an easing of demand in the labor market, and how that may skew their thinking in a way that isn't really good for businesses. So first thing first, Governor Jefferson. He gave a speech yesterday, as a matter of fact, to an insurance group. And I really liked what he had to say in that he acknowledged that monetary policy has a long lead time before you can see its impact upon demand. He says that it's long and it's variable, and a year simply is not enough time yet to know whether the higher interest rates are going to result in the desired effect. So that struck me as a very nice voice of reason. Like ITR, he's thinking the economy is going to grow in 2023 as measured by GDP, but slower and slower each quarter. So that tells me that he's looking at a lot of the data that we are. And he also went on to say that the uncertainty created by the tightening labor conditions is of concern, and that he acknowledges that could ultimately lead to a negative trend in the economy. So it's nice to hear somebody there, somebody in a position of responsibility, having a voice of reason. So take it as a win. The hawks aren't necessarily ruling the roost like they were before. The second point that I want to talk about was Adriana Kugler, I believe her name is. She's like Governor Jefferson, comes from academia and government. I don't know that she's worked in the private sector, which is unfortunately true of most of the people on the Federal Reserve. But she comes from a labor background. You know, the Federal Reserve, they always have to balance interest rates, jobs, you know, and interest rates affect inflation and then impact jobs. And an inflation dove is going to be more worried about the impact upon jobs than concerned about beating down inflation to an arbitrary number. And I find that to be encouraging. I couldn't find any writings that she's done that would indicate clearly whether she's going to tend to be a dove or a hawk. So we'll watch her carefully, but she should be more dovish than her replacement was anyways. And finally, I wanted to talk about the unrealistic expectation that the Fed has regarding the labor market. Labor lags the economy. So to expect softening in the labor market at this juncture of the business cycle, from our perspective, is irrational. I mean, employment doesn't weaken, and by weaken, I mean level off, go down, until after the recession starts. And it hasn't started yet. We don't think it's going to start for GDP until 2024, first quarter, and for U.S. industrial production until later this year. So there's no, from that perspective, why would you expect employment to be slowing down? And they're absolutely right. Employment numbers continue to look very strong. Any measure says that the employment numbers look strong, but that's not unusual for this part of the business cycle. Unemployment at 3.1%, that's an abnormal number. We haven't seen that number since 1969. And so I understand that could give them all sorts of tension headaches at the Federal Reserve. But it's not likely to stay that way either. We're looking at job openings trending downward, clearly trending downward. And we're also looking at the quit rate trending downward. Both of those are precursors to seeing some moderation in the job numbers. But I don't know that that's going to get the Federal Reserve what they ultimately want, which is wage inflation to cease and desist. It really should. I mean, we shouldn't be giving out the raises that we have in the past because of this, where we are in the business cycle, because there is an easing in the labor market on the way, if not already here. But man, if you look at the components of the CPI that really tie into labor costs, we're not seeing the moderation that the Fed needs to see in order to stop with the interest rates already. And they're not going to see that until late this year or early 2024. So let's hope Vice Chairman Jefferson can hold some sway over their thinking and understand that this is a long and variable program that they are on, and that patience is indeed a virtue. Thank you for watching this edition of FedWatch. On behalf of all the men and women of ITR Economics, see you next time.